Our studio guest today, Russell Singleton, is a physician assistant at Tripp Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls. The office is located on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office, which, gosh, up until last week was a really busy place. I know that from my own experience. If you have to mail something, try to do it before Thanksgiving. Uh, First of all, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays to all our listeners.
Yeah, New Year's Day coming up, and and it's a big day for a lot of people, and we make a lot of resolutions that we never keep.
Absolutely. That's what we're talking about today. The broader theme would be New Year's resolutions. And we're going to talk a lot about how a lot of us don't really keep those. And if we have time, we're going to dial in a little bit closer to those resolutions involving weight and appearance. A lot of us set out the new year and say we want to look better, we want to
Mhm.
feel better, and this is a good time to be a gym owner because your your numbers are certainly going to increase. But that's the direction we're going today. Hopefully, we can hear from some listeners and maybe give some tips on their health related New Year's resolutions as well.
I had a gym membership that I actually won at work at a big one of those national chains about 20 years ago, and I used it. I'd go every night after work. But I remember the fellow who ran the place said to me at the time, he said they get their biggest bulge of business right after New Year's. They're either gifts or resolutions, and he said within 30 to 60 days, the place is empty again.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same. Last time I talked to a personal trainer, they were telling me that it's usually in their experience around March or April before the levels are pretty much pre New Year's resolution, and that's really a shame. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to kind of pick up from where we left off a couple of months ago when we were discussing weight loss, and I think back then the big theme was lifestyle changes. It was making small little changes, whether it be in your diet or in your activity or exercise levels, but
Mhm.
that you adopt changes that you can live with and that you keep them for the rest of your life. We certainly don't want to encourage people or support the idea that you've got to turn 180 degrees, drastically change your life, and hold on to that as long as you can, because that type of resolution, that type of intervention doesn't last. We give up, we burn out.
I read, saw him on a TV show, in fact, before he passed away. Jack LaLanne was asked about all of the exercise he'd done throughout his life. And somebody said, "You must really like it." He said, "No, I hate it." And the interviewer said, "Well, why do you do it?" He said, "I wouldn't be here otherwise." And then he pointed out he had not had a slice of cake since the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
And so the discipline he had, most of us never have. But there are ways we can still make some changes.
Yeah, and I would just personally, Bill, I would hate to live like that and not have a piece of cake, really, or to cut anything out of your diet. I don't think
Mhm.
that's the way it should be done. And really, I don't think there's even one way that we have to go about this. I don't think there's one plan, one diet, or one pill that works for everybody. And I would say that anyone who tries to convince you that is trying to sell you something. At Tripp Family Medicine, we try and teach people correct principles, but we also try and adapt them to their individual circumstances, because if it is not something you enjoy, if it's not something you can live with, it's not going to last. And yeah, cutting whole food groups out, just I don't think that's a good idea for anybody.
And for people who are making a resolution, I think the best thing would be skip that and maybe just sit down and talk to someone like you and come up with a plan.
That's a great point, and I wanted to bring that up as I've been thinking about this over the last couple of weeks. The people that excuse me, I think the people who have that mentality that on Monday I'm gonna change, or on January 1st things are gonna be different. I think those are the people that tend to struggle a little bit because there's already this sense of, I don't want to do this. How much longer can I put this off? All right, today's already gone. Let's just start tomorrow. Let's just start Monday. If you want to be successful, I think you first need to change your frame of mind. You need to start now. Not just tonight with dinner, certainly not tomorrow or Monday or January 1st. I think you need to start now. What can you do right now? Can you get up? Can you take a walk? Can you stand at your desk? Can you eat a lighter lunch? Can you eat a little bit more protein? Can you to get the snack jar or dish off your desk. What can you do right now? And I think that helps support the idea that this is my new life. This is the way I live. This isn't some 6-week sprint that I have to hang on to as of January 1st.
I had a deacon at church. We got a break in a moment, but he told us the story one day about how he quit drinking because he thought it was taking up too much of his life. And he was driving down the road and he had a case of beer he'd bought at the store. And he suddenly stopped alongside the highway, put the case of beer down by the side of the road, and drove away, and never went back to that lifestyle. Um,
I love it.
it was very dramatic, and he could have said, "Well, I'll wait until I finish this,"
Exactly.
but he didn't. He just said, "No, I'm going to stop now." We've got more with Russell Singleton coming up in just a couple of minutes. He's joining us from Tripp Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Call it Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. And Bill Colley here, too, answering telephones as well during the course of the program. Joining us in the studio this half hour, Russell Singleton. He's a physician assistant with Tripp Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls, located on Fillmore Street, directly across from the old post office. Bill Colley with you as well, and I can pick up the telephone if you have a question or comment for Russell while he's in the studio. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. That telephone number 736-0300, 736-0300. We were talking a little earlier, Russell, about how people have to, just to recap, sometimes they set goals for themselves that are unrealistic, but you can set other goals. And if you, everyone wants to lose all that weight now, and if you look at it and say, well, where will I be a year from now? And maybe realize it's not going to happen overnight. Maybe that's a good way to start too.
Yeah, it's a great point. It reminds me of a patient I had who we had gotten started on our plan that we'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. But she was doing really well as far as I thought. She was adhering to some of the nutritional guidelines. She wasn't working real hard in the physical activity, but she was on some supplements and medications that we had prescribed her, and she was doing really well. I think after the first month, she'd only lost about 4 or 5 pounds, which when you have a lot of weight to go, it certainly seems like nothing. But her concern was that it wasn't happening fast enough. But then as the months went on, we kept seeing about 4 or 5 pounds a month, and she just wasn't happy. She wanted 50 pounds, she wanted 100 pounds, and she wanted it now. But I had to tell her and actually show her a graph of her weight and her vital signs as her weight just went down and down and steadily down, and I had to encourage her how she was running this marathon, and she was running it really well. And over the next 6 months, or the next year, she was going to end up where she wanted to be. And it's my personal opinion that people who lose weight more gradually are probably more likely to keep it off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think there's some research that shows that that's not necessarily true. You can lose a lot of weight very fast and keep it off, but just anecdotally, those types of people, it requires to lose a lot of weight requires some drastic changes, and those are the changes that burn them out. They can't keep it up. So slow and steady definitely wins the race here.
A friend of mine last week was saying that over the course of the last year, he's lost 55 pounds, but his goal had been 70. And he said initially he was depressed about that. And then the doctor looked at him and said, "You lost 55 pounds.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't hit 70, you're practically there."
Absolutely. When I sit down with the patient, one of the first things we do is talk about goals. I want to know where they want to be. Sometimes it is a number. I want to lose 50 pounds. Sometimes it's I want to fit back into my college pants, or sometimes I want to lose the baby weight, or the yeah, I want to get back to my pre-pregnancy weight. But medically speaking, my goal is usually about 5 to 10% weight loss, because those are the ranges supported in the literature. And if you can lose 5 to 10%, you're going to see improvements in blood pressure, in blood sugar, in cholesterol. And I think we're very successful at meeting those, and even going beyond that. I wanted to talk a little bit about our program here, because I don't think we really got to that last time. But one of the first things we do, again, is we sit down, we talk about goals. We then look at barriers. It's incredibly interesting how many people have barriers just dropped in their lap. For example, medications that they're taking are counterproductive. Certain conditions that they may have, diabetes or chronic pain, depression, are just seemingly insurmountable until they're addressed appropriately. And once we remove those barriers, then we start looking at their metabolic health. So we typically draw labs. We look at things like cholesterol, and we do hormone levels. We look at some other metabolic parameters. And oftentimes right there is ground to be gained. If you have a thyroid condition, for example, you're climbing an uphill battle, and we need to address that first before we go any further.
My niece is an example of that because she had thyroid removed in a cancer situation a few years ago, and her weight has fluctuated dramatically since then. And for someone who's only 24, 25 years old, it's tough for her. But again, it's not really through any fault of her own. She does exercise and eat well.
Yeah, the thyroid, I explain to patients that the thyroid is kind of like the gas pedal of your body or of your metabolism. And if you're thyroid deficient, you're not getting enough gas. There's not enough velocity, and the metabolism is going to slow down. And consequently, some people have too much. They're stepping on the gas much too far, and they overshoot the target. They end up with heart palpitations and sweating and dramatic and undesired weight loss, bowel irregularities. So it definitely is a nice balance. But in addition to actual medications, we talk a lot about supplementation too. And I'm pretty focused when it comes to supplements. I don't believe in loading people up in a lot of unnecessary supplements. I'm a firm believer that a good varied diet will provide most of what you need, with probably two or three exceptions. The first one I think is fiber. Not very many people get the recommended daily amount of fiber, and fiber can help regulate blood sugar levels. It can help with appetite. Vitamin D is another one, and Dr. Tripp is a great champion of vitamin D supplementation. I know he and I have both seen improvements all across the board, not just in weight loss with vitamin D supplementation. But then I'm a big believer in fish oil too, in those omega-3 fatty acids,
Mm-hmm.
those essential fatty acids. I think there's evidence pertaining to their heart health, the ability they have to augment depression medications, improve mood, fight inflammation. But in terms of weight loss, I think those fatty acids also help the body utilize and metabolize fat more efficiently.
We have a caller with us looking to chat with Russell this morning. It's 8:50 and it's 17, and you're on the air with Russell Singleton from Tripp Family Medicine.
Good morning and New Year's. Happy New Year's.
Thank you. Same to you.
I have a son that he's 22 now. And when he was 19, he was about 6'3" and weighed 320 or so pounds. And he didn't look very good. And we didn't bug him about it or anything. And on his own, he got on the internet and did research. And he researched all kinds of different ways to lose weight and came up with his own plan and implemented it. He didn't change the kinds of foods that he ate. He just changed portions. He changed the time of day that he ate. He wouldn't eat after 7 p.m. And he is hovering right around 200 pounds right now.
Wow, that is excellent.
I think one of the keys is it was his own plan, and he did it on his own. I think that's important. For myself, I was 50 plus and about 220, not 220, it was about 205, 210. And my wife took dairy out of my diet, or the vast majority of it, and I dropped 25 or 30 pounds just doing that. So that was a success for me.
Absolutely, congratulations.
And another thing, I think that one thing that people do that gets them discouraged is that they go to the gym to lose weight. And I think that's a mistake, because if you go to the gym, you're going to build muscle mass, and muscle mass weighs more than fat. And I think some people get discouraged because they don't see their weight dropping, and they don't try to take into account the fact that they're getting in better shape.
I think that you make some really good points. The first thing I want to comment on is the case of your son. You know, it goes right along with what Bill and I have been talking about. You've got to adopt changes you can live with. And I have some patients come in that want a meal plan. They want a menu. And while I can do that, I really hesitate to do that, because I can't tell you what to eat every day for the rest of your life. You have to make that decision. So again, we try and teach you correct principles. We teach people to, at least initially, keep a food journal so that you can work on improving your own diet. You can work on incorporating some better foods, and portion control is huge. I really think you can eat pretty much whatever you want as long as you eat it in a reasonable amount. And then the second thing I want to comment on is the gym membership and the weight training. I am a huge proponent of strength training, and I agree that some people will get discouraged not understanding that as they work out, they'll put on muscle. The scale could stay the same or it could go up. But yes, we're more concerned about overall health. I tell people that the scale is probably one of the worst ways to measure your progress. I like to take measurements of the hip and of the waist, and we watch those go down. But I'm even more interested in body composition. So for some patients who are interested, we'll do what are called skin fold measurements, and we'll do these every month, where we're actually estimating of their 200 pounds, for example, how much of that is fat, how much of that is lean mass, how much can be lost, because we need some amount of fat for a man. About 10 to 20% is a good range for a woman. About 10, or excuse me, about 20 to 30 is a good range. So I think our caller made some really good points. These have to be changes we can live with. We have to focus on being healthier, not necessarily losing weight. And strength training is a big part of that. I am really glad that he brought that up.
You've got a couple of other points too I know you wanted to make before we wrapped up today.
Well, I just wanted to finish up a brief review of the program we've developed at Tripp Family Medicine and kind of talk about some very fun things we have coming in 2016. We've gone over a lot of them. For the first couple of months, we talk about food journaling, about what we call intuitive eating, about goal setting and goal tracking. Then the next couple of months, we kind of shift our focus to exercise and physical activity, weight training. We'll talk about what we call high intensity interval training versus your slow and steady cardio where you get on the treadmill for an hour. And last but not least, we have at our fingertips a whole host of medications to help people, whether it's to curb appetite, whether it's to stimulate metabolism. But there are some new ones out on the market, which the FDA has approved for long-term use, and that's a great development that we haven't had in previous years. But coming this year, we are working on integrating a registered dietitian into our plan, which is a service you really just can't find anywhere else in Twin Falls. We've got a dietitian who is medically trained and who we hope to bring on to help with food and meal planning and individual coaching as well. So we're still in the development phases, and we're still kind of deciding how that's going to work out. But we're excited to expand our program, make it that much better, and make it that much more comprehensive. And that'll be coming really soon in 2016.
We all have to be worried, I think, about not just New Year's resolutions, but fads. I read last week where I think it was John Goodman showed up for an event in California, and he'd lost 70 pounds in 2 months on some diet. 70 pounds is a lot of weight to lose in just too much time.
Well, and that's one thing that the caller said that perhaps concerns me a little bit, that he was successful in avoiding dairy. And, I guess if that's what works and that's what he's happy with, then I think he's going to be okay as long as he's getting adequate protein and calcium from other sources. But I think that in general, these fad diets that tell you to not eat carbs or only eat paleo or only eat, there's the South Beach diet, there's the Atkins diet, all these different diets, I think they're just not really sustainable. I think there's a lot of nutrition in dairy, for example. I think there's a lot of nutrition in good whole grain carbohydrates. And not only is it just difficult to leave a food group out, I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest thing to do.
We want to point out if people would like to reach Tripp Family Medicine, You're online, you're on Facebook, and they can give you a call at the office.
Absolutely, 933-4400. We've got a great new commercial out that we hope our listeners have been able to see. Um, Look for our billboards as you're driving around town too. And otherwise, check us out on Facebook or even on Twitter, hashtag Dr. Tripp.
Want to thank Russell Singleton for coming by. Are you up next in rotation?
I am not. We're going to have the good doctor back in.
He must be taking some time off.
Never.
Yes. There's no time. Absolutely true. We've got a break coming up for news at 9 o'clock from Fox. And then one more hour of Top Story Ahead with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Hope you can stick around.